Okay, so we're back, and we were just talking about the half-apple joke, the half-worm joke. So what's worse than your land being taken for I-69? What would be worse than having your land taken? Because you get paid for it. What's worse?
Your land not getting taken, and you losing a lot of value for
Your land not getting taken. Maybe, I don't know what you mean, but I want it said better. How about your neighbor's house getting taken by I-69? Because what's that make you now? Right up next to the interstate, all right? That's called inverse condemnation, where you suffer the penalty, but you get no benefit. Another good example is when the airport created the new runways. There's an FAA law that says 3 miles from 1 mile on each side of the middle of the runway becomes FAA property. So what the FAA literally does is they start in the middle of the runway and they walk out a mile and they go, hey, this is what we can take. So John, we're going to take your house and we're going to give you the option. We're going to buy it from you. We can soundproof it, do whatever you want to do. But here's the problem. Right here is 1 mile. Sorry, don't help you because you're outside that mile, but you're now right up on the runway. What's that do to the value of your house? But you get no compensation for that. That's called inverse condemnation. Now, you can bring lawsuits against the airport, but it's hard to determine the loss in value. Was it 10 grand, 100 grand, million? You don't know. So there have been inverse condemnation suits before. So that's the second power. The third power the government has is this thing called taxation. Taxation. They have the right to tax you for the real estate you own, because that is supposed to pay for all of the governmental activities that don't generate income, like fire departments and hospitals and road workers and policemen, all right? And all they literally do is add all those bills up and then divide by the number, and that's your tax. Kind of a simple plan. Unless you're a Democrat, and then it's just to spread all the money out evenly amongst everybody. No, that's not right. Nobody? Okay, we'll let that one go. The third one is a term called escheat. Escheat. Escheat is if you die and you have no will leaving your property to somebody and you have no legal heirs, the real estate that you own's got to go somewhere. The state will take it from you and put it into the state coffers because it has to have the taxes paid on it. It has to be mowed and kept up and all of that. So if you die with no runs, no hits, and no errors, baseball joke, and you don't leave the property to anybody, the state will take it through escheat. They have escheated you out of it. That's the way to remember that. They have escheated you out of it. So these 4 items are called the governmental powers. They are the powers at the top of the Freedom Cup that no one gets. You don't have rights to them. You can't waive them. You can't sell them. You can't exercise them. You can't ignore them. They are the rights that nobody has. And that's why they're at the top. Okay? We got that? Because now what I want you to do is go back to page 34 and let's start this chapter. From here on out, when I say full rights, I mean full as in the amount that you can have. All right? Because nobody gets governmental powers. So from here on out, full rights mean everything but that little governmental powers, okay? So let's talk about an estate in land. An estate in land is the degree or the interest that you own in the property. There are many estates, but not all of them are interests. But not all interests are an estate. An estate is like ownership. A lien is an interest in property, but it's not ownership. See what I'm saying? And we'll clear that up. So we are going to talk about the ownership. There are two types of estates I want to talk about. The first estate is called the freehold estate. Freehold, and the second one is called the leasehold estate. I think it's mentioned just briefly. We will do a whole chapter on the leasehold estate itself. So I just want you to know there's two. There's the freehold and the leasehold. The difference between the two is the time that you actually own it. A freehold estate is for an indeterminable amount of time. The other way to think about that is freehold means forever. All right? Freehold means forever, or an undefined. The book likes the word indeterminable amount of time. Could be a week, could be 10 years, could be forever. How do I own property forever? I just pass it down my lineage, just like castles have been done in England for hundreds of years. So it's possible to own land forever. So the freehold estate is the one I want to talk about. Now, let's go back and look at and visit all five of these. What were the five rights again? Somebody yell out a bundle of rights. One of the twigs. Exclusion is one of your bundles of rights. Disposition. Quiet enjoyment or enjoyment. Control. And possession. Those are your five bundle of rights. These are what we will pass when we pass title, and we're going to pass the estate to another person. If I transfer all five of those rights, it is called a fee simple. Fee simple estate. Fee. F-E-E. Fee simple means I'm transferring all five of them to some degree, which we're going to talk about. There are two major types. The first and highest degree of fee simple is called fee simple absolute. And when I say absolute, I'm back to my freedom cup of water. I mean all of the rights that can be transferred. Remember the governmental powers we're not talking about. So fee simple absolute, you're transferring all five of the bundles of rights in their highest form they can be. I'm giving or transferring or conveying my property fee simple to Miguel. I'm giving him the absolute control, except for the governmental powers, because no one gets those. That's the highest form of transfer you can do. Fee simple absolute. All right? I can actually pour some of this water out. It's my property. I have control. As long as I'm within the governmental powers, I can actually transfer these rights to you in some form. Maybe I don't want to give you absolute power. I'm going to give you a fee simple determinable. defeasible. Fee simple defeasible. Defeasible is a real big fancy legal word that means with a condition. I'm going to put some condition on the property. Now, just as a general note, if I limit what you can do with the property through this defeasible, what do you think it does to the value of the property? It will lower the value to some degree. I don't know. All right? Because I'm not going to transfer all 5 rights. I'm going to transfer some defeasible method. There are 2 major defeasance. The first one is called fee simple determinable. Determinable. What does the word determine mean when I say I'm determined for something to happen? It will happen. So if I give you property or sell you property, I'm going to tell you what to do with the property in some form of a determinable aspect. There is a very good major example that probably most of you don't even know. You guys ever been down to the city market down in the center of town, or the food court down in that area? When that land was given to the city, way back in the early 19 whatever, the farmer that sold it to the city sold it as a fee simple determinable and said, you will always have a place for farmers to bring their fruits and sell. The second you stop doing that, it automatically reverts back to me. That's why there's farmers markets down there. They have to be. Because if they don't, they break the determinable aspect and the property reverts back to the original owner. That's the 19th edition, right? 19th. We're going to call you My Little Pony. You sound a little hoarse. Hey, Starbright. And wasn't that one the pony's name? No? I wouldn't know. That was a G.I. Joe guy with a kung fu grip. I don't know what you ever needed that for. Fee simple determinable. The farmer gave the property to the city and said, you will always have a place for the farmer to go. If you don't, determinable will automatically revert back to the owner, or if the owner's dead, to his heirs. All right?
So the city market will always be?
The city market will always be there. And unless they want to give up that whole city block that the gold building sits on and all of that, because that's how it was given to the city. All right? So it's fee simple determinable. It will revert back to the owner, or the owner can will these interests down the line. So they are called a future interest or a willable interest. There was a girl in this class several years ago that had one of these. She raised her hand and said, I got one. There was a church at Man in Kentucky. Her grandparents owned the land and gave the land to the church as long as it's a church. If they move by either getting bigger or smaller or cease to be in existence, that land reverts back to her grandparents. Her grandparents died. They willed it to her mother. When her mother died, she willed it to her. And she said, I have that interest in that property. It's not an estate, it's an interest. I don't own it, but I have an interest in it. So fee simple determinable, the thing you need to remember is no court needed. There is one that's very similar to it called a fee simple condition subsequent. Condition subsequent. Virtually the same thing. St. Francis sells land. They put a condition subsequent that says you can't have alcohol on it. They don't want alcohol sales. So there's no liquor stores ever go on those or things like that. The difference with this is condition subsequent. You have to go to court to prove that person's violating and have to have a court interjection and take it over. So the thing you guys need to remember, the big thing is fee simple determinable is an automatic happens. Fee simple condition subsequent, you have to go to court and get a court order to have the land returned to you. Other than that, we are not going to get into any of the major differences between these two for us. They're just legal stuff that we don't really care about. Any question on that? No?